An accessible trip doesn't just happen. It's not magic. It requires strategy and planning. I plan accessible travel all the time for myself as a deafblind traveler. And in this video, I'm going to share all my tips with you so you can plan the most accessible trips too. I'm curious, are you planning a trip right now? Where are you going? Let me know in the comments. Get ready to take notes because the apps and tools I'm going to share at the end are game changers. Let's dive in. The first tip might sound super basic, but it's not. Choose the right destination and the right style of trip for you. This is kind of a combination of thinking about what's exciting to you, what interests you, where do you want to go, and also what are your access needs and what kind of trip will make you the happiest. For example, some people really like cruises because you're in the same environment on a daily basis and you can get to know that, you can get comfortable. And then when you do go on excursions, there are different types of excursions and they're all arranged by the company. And I've seen ones that have planned for wheelchair accessibility, for example. So that might be a great style trip for some people. For me, I often pick a city because I know that many cities will have good public transit. And that's what also I look for. I check and see, is that correct? Can I get around this city without a car? Now, when I evaluate a public transit system, I don't have to look at wheelchair accessibility. But if you are a wheelchair user, then this is a great moment where you can go online and you can see feedback from the community. What have other people said about this destination? Another way that I kind of gut check a destination, and I recommend this, is going on their promotional website. So they'll have a website that promotes themselves as a destination. A lot of these destinations have accessibility pages. And it's a red flag to me if they don't. If you want to go somewhere and there's not an accessibility page, that might indicate it's not something that they've invested in, and it might not be the best destination if you have other options that you're also excited about. Sometimes I will go somewhere that I know will be inaccessible for me as a deafblind person. These are places that might not have sidewalks, that might not have a lot of street lights at night, or are more rural and in nature. And the way that I kind of balance this out for myself is I will spend less time in this destination and I will work with my partner. My partner is with me and I'll say, hey, I'm going to rely on you a lot more when we're here. I also really look for hotels that offer a restaurant on site and that they offer dinner so that if I don't want to walk at night in an area that is not as accessible and doesn't have as much sidewalk infrastructure, I can just eat at the hotel. And it's even better if I can also order in. So I have multiple options. So that's how I navigate it for myself, but you will figure out what works for you. And your interest and needs might change. Sometimes you want to go to the beach. Sometimes you want to have a trip focused on food, art, and history, and that goes into a city. So mix it up. Another tip in terms of building out your trip and making those first decisions is, do you want to travel by yourself? Do you want to travel with someone else? Do you want to potentially join a group trip? That's another option that I don't know if a lot of travelers consider, but it can be really fun. There are also many accessible travel companies that you can book with. And you can work with them usually in two different ways. They can plan an itinerary for you that you do privately or with your small group, or they might offer group trips that you can join. And the great thing about those is that they'll be designed to be accessible. You can ask them questions. You can make sure that they build in what you need for your access needs. Then you'll be traveling with other disabled travelers and experience community, which can be so beautiful. For me, one of the best trips and memories that I have is when I partnered with an accessible travel company in Portugal to co-host an accessible trip to Lisbon for 8 disabled travelers. People came and had a wonderful time. They had all different kinds of disabilities. We all connected and shared about our lives and our lived experiences, and we supported each other. And there was so much patience in the group. No one was rushing anyone else, and everything was adapted with everyone's access needs considered. All the transportation, like the vans that we rode in, were workable for everyone, was accessible. So those are the kinds of things that you can just relax about when you're traveling with an accessible travel company. If they're doing their job, then you can just relax and not have to question. can I do this activity? Will this be accessible for me? And that is so freeing. Next, when buying airfare or train tickets, disclose your disability, especially in Europe. When you go to the airport in Europe and you're traveling from the airport to your plane, a lot of times you have to climb upstairs to get into your plane. If you've been traveling primarily within the US, you might not be used to this because we always have a jetway path that brings us right to the door of the plane. But in Europe, I have learned that oftentimes you are even going down steps. There should be an elevator just to get down to the level of the plane. You can get someone to pick you up at the gate in a vehicle, take you to the plane, and then the whole apparatus raises itself to the level of the plane. And that's how you can get on in an accessible way, but you have to disclose ahead of time. Even at the airport, they can't really arrange it for you on the fly. They're not as nimble as I would expect them to be in the airports that I've been in. So that's really, really important. I think that on trains, you can also request assistance. Like, for example, when booking on Amtrak in the United States, you can disclose your disability, but then you can also disclose whether or not you need assistance. And so I appreciate that. So, for example, in an emergency, they would know that I'm a disabled passenger, but I can also opt out of assistance if I'm covered and I don't need it. So I really appreciate that. Plan for emergencies and contingencies. It's really important, for example, to know where the nearest hospital is and maybe pre-select one that has good reviews and check if there are nearby pharmacies, have copies of your prescriptions on hand and your medical documentation, and just give yourself that peace of mind. So for example, if you're in a rural location, it might be far away from a hospital, and you can decide, is that comfortable for yourself? And would you prefer to be closer? Another thing you can do is you can buy travel insurance. And this is something that I have done. I personally have found it difficult to actually submit a claim and get reimbursement. So make sure you read the fine print and have an understanding of how that policy will cover you and what they won't cover. But one of the things that they often include and that can be really, really important is I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like that they will airlift you out of a destination and take you back to the United States. And that can be a very expensive process if you don't have the travel insurance. So keep that in mind. Another thing that's important is when you are at a hotel, for example, consider what floor you want to be on in case of an emergency. When I go into a high rise hotel, I typically avoid staying on one of the top floors because if there is an emergency, like a fire alarm, and we have to walk all the way down the steps, that's really stressful for me with my weight cane under duress, and there might not even be adequate lighting in the staircase because it's not the usual place that the hotel guests use to get to their rooms. So consider all of that and make adjustments that will make you feel good in the case of an emergency. Another thing that I also do, bonus tip, is I bring my own smoke alarm and my own carbon monoxide alarm everywhere when I travel because around the world, it is not 100% the standard guideline for there to even be a smoke alarm in hotel rooms, much less carbon monoxide alarm. So I feel better knowing that I can protect myself by just carrying those things in my bag and they're not that big. Time for a little show and tell. Here's my smoke alarm. See how small it is? It can fit in the palm of my hand. And the carbon monoxide alarm, I would say, is about the size of 2 cell phones. I think is pretty small as well. Another important tip is just to know the emergency number. What number do you call if you are having a health emergency? Is there a separate number for the police? And just noting that down can be really helpful in terms of feeling like you can relax when you're in a destination that you don't know. Let's dive in now to itinerary planning. Yay! So fun always. Now, when choosing the activities that you're going to do, don't count yourself out of physical activities. Sometimes when we are disabled, especially with physical disabilities, we might automatically assume that we're not going to be able to find activities that are accessible for us, but that is not true. There is so much you can do. Sometimes you can find adapted activities like adaptive sports. On our group trip to Portugal, we did adaptive surfing. And people with all different disabilities participated in this, and they figured it out and adapted to each one of us. It was so much fun. I tried to stand up on the board. I didn't quite make it, but I made it to my knees and I had a blast. So there can be options for you that are already adapted. Another way that you can get accessible physical activities is to communicate about your access needs ahead of time. And you can do this with any activity that you are participating in, but specifically with physical activities, I communicate exactly what I need. If I'm hiking, I need them to provide hiking poles if I haven't packed them or brought them myself. That helps me navigate. Also, if I'm doing something like horseback riding, which I have recently rediscovered, it's amazing. I have challenges when I'm hiking because I always have to look at the ground. The ground is ever changing, and I have to constantly keep track of what's happening down there. So I can't really look up at the view unless I pause. But riding a horse in Colombia, in the coffee region of the country, was incredible because a horse did all the walking for me. And I was looking around at the beautiful view the whole time. While I have a little bit of vision, I can use it and I can see far away still. So that was something that I really enjoyed. And I didn't really think or understand ahead of time how it would kind of solve for one of my access needs, but it did. So you might be able to get creative and think about, well, what kind of physical activity might really work well for me? And can I try it with a provider that is willing to listen, willing to understand, and maybe even consider a private experience so that you can go at your own pace? Also, consider providers that are focused on adaptive outdoor recreation. There are centers, and I hosted a retreat at one of them, the National Ability Center in Park City, Utah. And there's a whole video that we have posted on our channel about this experience. We can go and see all the outdoor and indoor adaptive recreation activities that they offer, which are so much fun. And they really have the capacity to work with people with all different types of disabilities. They have different types of wheelchairs and devices, and like for archery, they kept bringing all these different types of equipment out, and it was really cool. When planning for other activities, I really invite you to consider what brings you joy, what kind of environments are most accessible for you, and get that clarity as for you to actually build out an itinerary that you'll be excited about. One thing to consider always is planning for breaks. You don't want to plan too many things in the day. And you also need to figure out like, how many times a day do you need to eat. Eating will take a lot of time during travel. So sometimes for lunch, I just do a small snack or go to a bakery or something because I want to spend more time focused on the destination during the daytime. The daytime is when I see the best. So I might not take a longer lunch, and that's what works for me. But figure out what works for you and make sure that your itinerary has space for discovery, for breaks, and for just switching things up when you want to. One thing that I will also suggest for the itinerary is consider different types of activities. And if you are going to visit any museum, art, or cultural institution, they might have tickets with a disabled rate. So a disability rate is going to give you a discount, or sometimes you get in for free and your companion might even get in for free. However, sometimes they ask for documentation. I've had varying experiences with this. You need to look at the website. You need to see, can I buy the disabled rate online, or do I have to buy it only at the door? If an attraction is really popular, I might just buy the ticket ahead of time without doing the discounted rate because I don't want to miss my chance to see it. If it's an attraction that I don't think is going to sell out, I just show up and I have my letter from the state of New York with my legal blindness certificate on my phone ready to show them. And that has worked and that has been sufficient when I have been traveling. Now, I have a white cane though, so I have a physical indicator of my disability. I really don't know what the experience is for people who have disabilities that are non-apparent, like chronic illnesses, chronic migraines, or whatever it is that might not be with a physical indicator. So I'd love to know, have you been able to get the disabled rate at museums or at attractions when you've traveled? If you have a non-apparent disability, share your experience so we can know your tips too. That can be a little bonus. You save a little money. One of the things that I always love to do when I'm traveling is eat. I'm such a foodie and I really enjoy trying the local food, the local cuisine. Now, one challenge that I always have when dining out is that restaurants can be dark and they can be noisy. Here is my tip for you on how to avoid showing up to a restaurant and finding out that it's completely inaccessible because it's so loud and so dark. What I do is I use Google reviews, and when I access it on my phone, it's very easy to click on reviews and then click on the search icon. When you get down to the reviews, on the left-hand side, on top of the reviews where your categories are displayed, there is a search bar that will open up if you click on the icon. In that search bar, I type dark, I click or type noisy, and just putting keywords for the conditions that I don't want. And I see are people reporting that. That really helps me right away gut check or do a pulse check. Whatever the buzzword is that you want to use for that, I just know quickly, is this restaurant potentially going to be a problem for me? And do I want to go there or not? I have options. If I really love the menu, I might be able to request that they turn down the music or something like that. But I really want to know what I'm getting into, and then I can decide. Another Google Maps tip that I don't know if everyone knows about is when you are using it for navigation to walk somewhere, or even I think with public transit directions, you can select an option for wheelchair accessible directions. And that way you will not be directed to go up and down stairs. Sometimes cities have stairs in them. We might not be used to that, but it can be very common, especially in old towns in Europe. That's where I found them a lot. So that's a get around, a workaround, so that you can hopefully have an accessible walk. To help make travel really smooth for you, I highly recommend developing self-advocacy scripts. What this is, something that you prepare and memorize, and you can also write it down, but you just prepare ahead of time for situations that you know are going to come up where you are ready to disclose whatever you have to say about yourself and make a specific request for your access needs to be met. I have developed so many of these for travel because I end up in the same situations over and over again. The one I always share is the script that I have for the person that's just next to me on an airplane, where I showed it to them on my phone. I don't say it verbally. I have it on my phone in English and Spanish, and it says, I have hearing and vision disabilities. If you need to get up or if you need my attention, tap my shoulder because I'll be listening to something. I don't even know if it says all of that, but it's so helpful and it will make travel a lot smoother for you. The more that you can prepare your self-advocacy scripts and exercise your self-advocacy muscles. And I actually have a training on this that I offer periodically throughout the year. So look out for when we're going to launch it again. Another example of a self-advocacy script that I use all the time is what I tell a tour leader on a group tour, like a walking tour. I tell them, I wear hearing aids. I need to read your lips. Can you please face me when speaking? And I even demonstrate to them what happens when they point at something behind them and turn to it. I say, that does not work for me. So these are examples of the self-advocacy scripts that you can prepare. If you want to find out about my next workshop, sign up for my newsletter and you'll get the announcements when we drop them. Now we are at the last part of the video where I think you're going to be taking lots of notes, so get ready. We're going to talk now about apps and tools that can help you to have the most accessible and fun trips. One thing we're going to start with is Aira. Aira is basically an app where you can call live another person who can use your camera and see where you are. They can also access your location and can pull up maps of where you are as well, and they can help you navigate. Aira is commonly used by blind travelers, and it costs money, but many airports, especially in the United States, have offered it for free. So they have an agreement to make it available to everyone for free while you're at the airport. The reason this is so awesome for blind travelers is so many of us are offered wheelchairs when we ask for assistance. And we say, that's not the right solution. I need someone to walk with me and guide me. And that's not always possible. There's not always flexibility in the accessibility support that you get. So I love that Aira can get us exactly what we need, where we can stay independent and we don't really have to interact with the airport assistance personnel if we don't want to. So IRAP is a game changer if you're not using it already at the airports. Another navigation tool that is really amazing for blind and low vision people is NaviLens. And I'm sure there are other use cases. That's the kind of thing with accessibility. So many more people benefit than who it's designed for. Now, NaviLens is like a QR code for blind people. It's a really colorful, big code, and it's a square. Now, in Europe, I have seen NaviLens on bus stops. I have seen it inside train stations. I've seen it around in many places. I've also been to a conference in the United States where NaviLens was posted around the conference venue to label the different areas. I've been to an office, an organization for blind people where NaviLens is also labeling the different areas. How do you functionally use this? When you see one of these QR codes, you open up the NaviLens app, or if you know that there might be one nearby, you can open the app and scan around, and it'll catch a code from far away if there is one. Then the code will give you the information. It will read aloud, but you can also read it on your phone. So because I wear hearing aids, I like to read it on my phone. So it might tell me the name of the bus stop, what direction the bus is going, when the next bus is coming. And that can be so helpful for me. I love being able to check where I am and check what's happening. So NaviLens can really help you navigate independently and get quick information. Many common websites and apps have also built in accessibility information. For example, Google Maps has a section usually I think in about, where you can see if there's a step-free entrance or wheelchair accessible bathroom, things like that. So maximize what you're already using. Yelp also has information on accessibility. Airbnb has information. And also for me, what I like on any of these places that have photos, and I like to check the photos. I like to see what is the evidence and of the location. So photos can be really helpful. There are also tons of apps and places where users submit reviews on accessibility. And I don't have one particular one to recommend because I haven't used them enough to be able to say which ones are accurate, but I have heard of apps like or websites like Wheel the World, Access Now. There are also bloggers that focus on accessible travel. Like I have a whole YouTube channel here. You can get information right from other videos on this channel. A big accessible travel blogger is Corey Lee, and his brand is Curb Free Corey Lee. Sophie Morgan is a reporter and journalist. There are many people sharing their accessible travel experiences. On Instagram, I follow Sweet Satellite, who shares about travel, and so many others. So I think that it will be hard to name them all right now, but there's a lot of creators out there that you can see what they're doing and learn about accessible travel from them and their real experiences, which is very exciting. Another app that can help blind people and low vision people is Be My Eyes. I believe Be My Eyes should still be free. They have volunteers, and I also have an AI component now where you can communicate with someone and they can help you with whatever you need, whether that's reading something like a piece of paper, finding something. I tried to use them when I dropped an earring back on the floor, and they unfortunately could not find it. I mean, it was very, very small, but it's available and it's a resource. I love travel. It's been a passion of mine for a long time, and now I've been to 40 countries, and you can do this too. If you have a dream of traveling and you've been concerned about is your disability going to hold you back? It is not. It is completely achievable and possible for you to have wonderful experiences around the world, even in destinations that you might not think are workable for you. Don't think like that. Think expansively. You can travel and you can make amazing memories. So now I want to hear what's next on your travel list. Where do you want to go? And let me know which of these tips was most helpful for you, because I want to make sure these videos are really working for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.